Hey guys, Ben here with Oddly Armed, and today we're going to do something a little bit different than the review videos I've been doing so far. We're going to be taking a look at my PWS UXR. Now this is something that I've only had for about a week, so this is really just going to be kind of a discussion about my initial impressions of the rifle and then my first range trip, so some of the issues I had there. Because this rifle was announced last year at SHOT Show and actually had pretty good amount of popularity. People were interested in it. It did some things differently from some other rifles on the market. So it was one of the more popular rifles at the show. And then it was released later in 2024, I think around the summertime or maybe getting into September. But since then, there's been very, very little information on these. I haven't seen anyone do a video on these that wasn't from PWS or potentially promoted by PWS. So full disclosure, I am not sponsored at all by PWS. I bought this with my own money, and I'm here to give you my really undiluted thoughts on it and tell you exactly how it did at the range. Just another disclosure here, I did talk to somebody from PWS after I posted some stuff on Facebook that I was going to be doing some review videos of this rifle. They just contacted me to make sure if I had any issues that I would talk to them about it so they could help me work through them. Not getting too deep into it right off the bat here, but I did have issues with my first range trip, which were completely because of me. That was a user error kind of situation. And then the second range trip, I also had issues, but that I'm primarily chalking up to a break-in period for this rifle at this point. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get a close look at this and go over some of the features and how I have mine set up for the first bit of my shooting progress with it. All right, so starting from the front, I do have a Chemo muzzle device on this. Originally, it comes with a Plan B compatible muzzle brake. That's also Reardon Atlas compatible, I believe, but there is a taper mount underneath the muzzle device here, so you will need a taper mount adapter since it doesn't have a 90-degree kind of shoulder to it, so that is something to keep in mind. But it is 5/8 by 24 threaded. This is the 16-inch 308 caliber one. Might be 16.5. I can't remember 100% off the top of my head. But yeah, so moving back from there, we have the handguard for the UXR, and this is nice and one of the modular features here. So this pops off with a single pin here, uses M-LOK. The rail is monolithic up top, so up front where there's no rail up here, that's the handguard, and then it moves back to the rail, which is integrated into the receiver back here. So if you mount a laser or anything that needs to maintain zero on the top here, it will, because it's not on the handguard, it's on the receiver. So the light is a Sotac Surefire knockoff. I really just wanted to test this thing out and see how it can stand up to 308 recoil on something like this. And then I just have that going back to a tape switch here and a Surefire pressure pad and a switch, and then I have a Chris iron sight on here. On the left side, you can see our charging handle for the UXR. It is folding, and it snaps into place there. And then it is also potentially reversible from the left side to the right side. However, in the user manual, it doesn't give you instructions on how to do it. Now, I think there is a clip in there that you have to somehow pull off to swap it between sides, but again, that's something I'm not 100% sure on at this point. Moving back there, you see these 3 screws. So these are integral to your caliber exchange and taking the barrel out. So these are what you need to torque down to 80 inch-pounds to hold the barrel in place and torque it in place. Moving back from there, we have our ejection port here on the left side, as well as the magazine well. Now this is another part of the super modular system that they worked out for this rifle. Of course, this one is using 308 magazine, so this is a AR-10 style PMag, and that just slaps into the bottom there. And then it also has ambi controls there, so you also have that magazine release on the left side. And then moving down from there, we have our bolt catch and bolt release, which is this lever here. And this is basically straight off of the Bushmaster ACR or the Robinson Armament XCR, which is honestly my favorite way to have a bolt catch, bolt release setup. So you can very easily hold up if you're locking the bolt back and then press it down to release the bolt. Moving back from there, we have our safety selector, which is ambidextrous on both sides. And then it is also 45 degree It is a little bit plasticky feeling, but it works pretty well. I wouldn't necessarily want to change anything on there. And then the pistol grip is going to be AR compatible, and this is I think it's a Thrill rough texture grip. I have one of these on my MPX as well, and then it's just rebranded for PWS. And then we have our rear sight. I have my Vortex Gen 2 Razor on here. That's a 1:6 power scope. And then moving back from there, one thing I did notice when I picked it up is there is a bit of it looks like a chip on the rear takedown pin. That is actually meant to be there. So that's, it looks like it's kind of off or broken or something, but that is machined in there for a reason. I don't know what that reason is, but if you see that when you pick up one of these rifles, it's normal. And then moving back from there, we have two QD sling swivels at the back of the receiver. And then getting into the stock, it is a side folding stock. So we have a button here on the left. It pops over to the side, and it's just held there with friction. So it's very easy to pop that over and get it back into place. There is a button here at the back to adjust your length of pull. And then there's also a cheek riser here with a button so you can change your cheek height there. There is also underneath here, if you take the screw off, a Picatinny rail so you can attach whatever stock that you want, or a brace or something if that is an option for you. However, one thing to note is it's at a bit of an angle, so it might be a little bit awkward with most of your options out there. And just to hit a couple more things here, there is a kind of a hole in the handguard there where you can reach your gas block, which is adjustable. There's 3 positions: normal, adverse, and suppressed. So that is an option there. You can see the minus on the side of the receiver there, which we're going to talk about when we get to some of the cons of this rifle. We'll get into that a little bit. But moving back from there, again, we have our charging handle, which is non-reciprocating. You can kind of see right there, there's a little slot, and then in the charging handle itself, this is kind of difficult to show you, but there is a roll pin there, which fits into that slot. It's not the most reliable way to keep the charging handle forward, and it will often come back when the bolt does as well, even though it's non-reciprocating, but it doesn't really have any mass behind it, so it's not going to hurt you at all when it does. Unlike something like a SCAR or something with an actual reciprocating charging handle. Now moving back to the trigger, this is compatible with basically all AR-15 style triggers as far as I'm aware. In this right now, it has a Trigger Tech 2.5 to 5 pound adjustable trigger, which is very nice, has a flat face, but yes, you can switch that out to basically any semi-automatic AR-15 style trigger. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about my experiences getting the UXR out to the range for the first time. So I picked this rifle up last week, I want to say around Tuesday, so just after New Year's. And after I got it home, I did go ahead and tear down the rifle, take it all apart, try and figure out how everything works on it, which is kind of pretty standard for me. So that included removing the barrel, which is part of one of the main features of this rifle, which is caliber conversions. So between swapping out the barrel and the magwell as well as the bolt, you can swap this from not just 5.56 to like 300 blackout, but you can swap it from 308 to 5.56, and then down the line they're going to have other conversion kits hopefully. I'll go ahead and throw in a picture here which has some of the kits they might be planning to include there, as well as like their system for recognizing which magazine well is in the rifle or which bolt's in the rifle. But anyways, it's just a couple of dimples that they use to actually differentiate between the different parts. But in any case, I did pull the barrel out and I went to go ahead and put it back in and torqued it down to the 80 inch-pounds that you want to have the barrel in there. Now, what I didn't do was seat the barrel correctly. So you want to make sure it is all the way back against the receiver when you do that, or all the way back in the trunnion as far back as it'll go. So my first range trip, it was seated a little bit too far forward and I couldn't get the rifle to fire, which in hindsight is a good thing because I didn't have any out of batteries. The rifle was completely safe. It was just user error on my part not getting the barrel correctly installed in the rifle for it to fire. So no skin off my teeth. That is not the rifle's fault. That is entirely my fault. So I would not factor that into any of your decisions with this rifle whatsoever. Now that's where I did have some conversations with the guy who works for PWS, and he recommended that I check that, and after looking at the trunnion and seeing the barrel a little bit further forward than it should be, I realized that was the issue, and I pushed the barrel back into the trunnion a little bit further, torqued it back down again, and that's where we get to the second range day. Went back to the range again the next day with around 120-ish, 100-ish rounds of .308 ammunition between, ZSR ammunition as well as Cellar and Bellet. And I actually got the rifle to fire, which was fantastic, and it worked for the most part. Another thing that was brought up when I was talking to the rep from PWS is these do have a bit of a break-in period, and in my experience that's not atypical, particularly with .308s. They tend to have some parts that need to have a bit of wear on them to work correctly. Some of the main issues that I was getting with the UXR was a failure to go fully into battery. So this was after dropping the bolt when it's locked back primarily, or just racking the charging handle. The bolt would not go fully into battery, and I would have to pop out the magazine, pull back on the charging handle a little bit, and release it until the round went into the chamber. So that was directly attributed to a break-in period. He was saying that has to do with breaking in the extractor pin, apparently. So that's something that should go away with time. Time will tell if that does go away. The other issues I had were with stovepipes. I had a couple of stovepipes with it, and I think that may have also been attributed primarily to user error. And that's not just due to me, it's due to some confusing aspects with the rifle and how they have it set up, mainly with the gas block here. So you have three settings. On the right side of the receiver, you have a plus marking, which on the MCX, when you turn the gas valve towards the plus, you're getting more gas. And when you turn it away towards the minus sign on the other side of the receiver, you're getting less gas. Now on the UXR, that's reversed. So on this second range trip where I got it to fire, I think that was the main issue I had, as I was running it in adverse, which was kind of giving me too much gas, and the bolt was moving too quickly, and it was catching the round, the casing before it could fully eject. So that's going to be something that I'll have to do a follow-up video on next time and go over that a little bit more. Now, what I think personally is one of the coolest features of the UXR and one of the most innovative ones that they worked into it, besides just like the caliber conversion, which is cool, but in a lot of ways it's been done before, it has a freaking bore evacuator. Now, that's not something I have ever seen in a small arm before. That's something that you typically see with a main battle tank, like post-World War II, Cold War era. So you'll see there's like this bulge part of the barrel on the tank, and that's what the bore evacuator is. And essentially it creates a pressure variance, which pushes all of the gases and the smoke and everything, all the fumes, out behind the shell as it leaves the barrel of that main battle tank, so that none of that gas goes back into the crew compartment of the tank and potentially chokes them out, and carcinogens and all that fun stuff that tankers really don't want to have to deal with. So that's a really cool feature to have in a small arm. I want to get more rounds through it to really get a feel for it. I did run it with two different suppressors. First one is my trusty Saker 762, so I've had this can for probably 10 years now, and this is a full back pressure can. Full disclosure, I think I ran this on the adverse setting, and I couldn't get it to work on there, obviously, because this thing was ridiculously overpressured. I did try running it on normal, and it did work with this can on there, and it actually worked pretty reliably when I swapped it over to normal. Now, I also used it with my new hotness, which is the B&T SRBS 762. So this is a lower back pressure can that has, I don't really want to say flow through, but it's got a lot less back pressure than this guy. And it was mostly reliable on the PWS in the normal setting. I still did have a couple of stovepipes with it, so it wasn't 100%, but for the most part, it worked well. It sounded good. And I really didn't get any gas to the face with it. It was very nice. I shot it next to my old trusty Scar 17S. So that one I actually have a tuned gas system on that makes it run really, really nice with a suppressor. So it wasn't a big difference moving to this guy with a bore evacuator, but it still was a very good shooter with a can on it. And just briefly going over the magazines I use, the first one's going to be the Magpul 20 rounder AR-10 style magazine, and this is one that actually comes with this rifle, and that I think worked the best out of all the magazine options. I also had the 10 round version of that magazine, which worked very well. I don't think I had any malfunctions with this magazine, so keep that in mind. Other magazines that I tried with it were the Lancer 20 rounders, and I've had issues with these in other platforms, so these really aren't my favorite AR-10 style magazine, but I did run it in there and it actually worked fairly well. I did still have a couple of malfunctions with it, but it really was pretty close in performance to the Magpul 20 rounder. And then the last magazine that I'll talk about is my DPMS Steel 20 round magazine. Now this one did have issues, and that was it didn't really lock in securely to the rifle. So after 2 rounds or so, it would drop out of the magazine well. So I would not recommend this magazine with these, and actually I can go ahead and demonstrate that real quick. So you can see it kind of looks locked in there, but if I shake it around, just give it a bit of a shake, and actually there it locked in pretty good. But that is something, there it goes again. So that is something to keep in mind with the DPMS steel mags. Don't know with one of the ridiculously expensive CAC mags if that would work a little bit better, but that is a consideration there. All right, so let's just do a little bit of a recap on the pros of the rifle after my first couple of times getting it out and shooting it. The biggest pro in my mind is the actual design of the ergonomics. This has really, really nice control features, and I like the way the stock's set out. Safety selector, bolt release, your mag release, your charging handle, everything is pretty well designed in my opinion, with the exception of the charging handle latch. I think that could use a little bit of work. But other than that, ergonomically is a very well laid out rifle. One little note on that is the bolt release. After it locks back on an empty magazine, sometimes it's a little bit stiff and you might have to take your thumb to actually press down on it because your trigger finger isn't going to have enough strength for it. I've seen a couple of other, or at least one other video with some guys having an issue with that. It wasn't that bad for me, and you could still get the bolt to release, but it is definitely something to keep in mind. Now, the next pro that I'm going to talk about is the trigger. So the TriggerTech trigger in here is a very nice trigger, and then the fact that you can swap this out with basically any AR style trigger is a fantastic feature in my mind. It gives you a lot of different options there. And then the modularity is another really cool option. So again, I just have it in the 308 right now. I'm waiting for them to release SBR kits for 5.56 before I get one of those conversion kits for this guy. So hopefully those will be coming in the near future so I can do a little bit more videos on that and showing how the conversion process works. Next up is going to be the weight. So this comes in at 7.8 pounds without the scope, without anything on there, just slick. And as a 308 caliber rifle, that's actually not bad at all. So for example, the SCAR 17 from the factory with the 16-inch barrel comes in at about 8 pounds. So it's about 0.2 pounds lighter than that. We'll know at SHOT Show, they did say it was going to come in at 6.8 pounds. So it came in a full pound heavier than they announced at SHOT Show, but it's still not bad at all for a 308 caliber rifle. Then as far as the recoil goes, it is a very nice shooter. I didn't really have any qualms with how it felt for a 308. It had pretty light recoil around where the SCAR 17 is. So yeah, that's not bad at all. I can't hit it at all on that. And then as far as a suppressor host goes, for a 308, it's actually one of the better ones that I've shot. Again, I want to put more rounds through it to kind of get a better formed opinion, especially with how the freaking bore evacuator does. But yeah, so first characteristics of it were pretty good. And getting into the cons on it, the first one I'm going to have is the initial reliability for the first range trip. So I probably had around 10 to 15 malfunctions with it in total. Now again, I'm gonna mostly chalk that up to a break-in period with this rifle, but time will tell as I get more rounds through it. By the time I get to hopefully around the 300 mark, or 300 round mark, that'll completely clear up, but I'm hoping to do some more on this, some more testing, and then when we get there, if I'm still having issues, then I'll be talking about that for sure. So hopefully it'll get past that and it'll be a little bit better. Another issue is with some of the instructions as far as the gas block goes. They aren't super clear in the manual. And then again in the manual as well, it doesn't show you how to change that charging handle from the left to the right side. So I think that's something that they really need to have on there if they're going to be putting it in their literature as a feature. Another one is the ability to install the barrel incorrectly. Now again, this is mostly on me for screwing it up in the first place, but I think there should be some wording in the manual to say that you need to make sure that it's completely flush with the back of the trunnion. Just like a little line in there would be nice and helpful. And then the final one is it's generally unknown at this point, so there's not going to be any aftermarket parts for this at all. It's really just going to be starting to get out there, and really that's why I want to make the video on it, because I haven't seen any information on these. I haven't seen good videos on it, so I really want to get one, be the guinea pig, and see how it does so other people can start getting into the platform a little more. And that'll do it for my initial impressions in the first range trip for the PWS UXR. So thank you guys for tuning in. I'm also going to be doing a disassembly video where we're going to be taking a look at how this thing comes apart, how it works. It uses a modified long stroke gas piston system. So we'll look at that as well as a bore evacuator on here in a little bit more detail than I'm going to on this video. And thank you for checking it out. Check out that video as well as some of the other ones I have posted up. So thank you for the support, and I hope to be back with this rifle, hopefully working 100% here in the near future.